And yet, surprisingly, it turns out that wealthier people do not actually use their time in happier ways on a day-to-day basis. In fact, they spend more time working, commuting, and shopping, 3 activities that aren't associated with all that much happiness. Now, to try to quantify the seemingly squishy idea of day-to-day happiness, researchers have developed what's called the U-index. So this refers to the amount of time individuals spend in an unpleasant mood on a typical day. So this is when your feelings of tension, irritation, or depression are outweighing your feelings of happiness. Now, over the past 5 decades in North America, we've seen incomes rise fairly substantially. But during the same period of time, the U-index has barely budged. And remarkably, just making people feel as though their time is worth a lot of money can actually be sufficient to lead them to feel like they don't have enough of it. So for example, in one experiment conducted right here in Toronto, researchers at the U of T assigned students to play the role of consultants. So the students were asked to do a variety of tasks, and one group of them were asked to charge out for their work to another company at the rate of 15 cents a minute. So this works out to the rather paltry rate of $9 an hour. Meanwhile, other students were told to do exactly the same tasks, but they were told to charge out at a rate of $1.50 a minute, so $90 an hour. Now, even though all the students were told to do exactly the same stuff for the same amount of time, those whose time was worth $90 an hour ended up feeling stressed out and pressed for time. So in other words, just making students' time worth a lot of money was sufficient to turn them into stressed out, time-squeezed consultants. Now, why would this possibly be? Well, we know that when a resource is scarce, it tends to be perceived as valuable. So you can think of diamonds or drinking water in the desert or women at Star Trek conventions. When there's not a lot of something, we tend to think they're very valuable. Now, this is such a well-learned association that we also perceive the converse. So when something is very valuable, we tend to perceive it as being rather scarce. And this helps to explain why we see this kind of inherent trade-off between material affluence and time affluence. Now, recognizing this apparent trade-off, researchers have begun to measure both types of wealth. So, for example, we can measure material affluence by asking people to rate their agreement with statements like, "I've had enough money to buy the things that are important to me." We can also measure time affluence by asking them to agree with statements like, "I've had enough time to do the things that are important to me." Now, traditionally, of course, financial institutions have focused on material affluence, but it turns out that time affluence matters also. So people who score higher in time affluence are happier, they have better health, and they're more satisfied with their jobs. So I would suggest then that part of the business of credit unions may lie in not only promoting material affluence, but trying to promote time affluence as well.